This is kind of a smoky day here, but I wanted to make a little testimony for a girl I've been talking to. I just wanted to have this one because I've been thinking about my husband who met her father actually years ago, maybe close to 40 years ago. He went and talked to a bunch of addicts at a church, a great big church auditorium, I think, or some kind of auditorium with a bunch of addicts, okay? So he got to know her father, but then Jean got to know her grandmother because of her father, which is kind of cool because now I'm getting to know her. And I actually got to know her grandfather. So I want to talk a little bit about this story. So I met her grandmother in California, and she was pretty fearful. And we had a good time together. I was on my way to Hawaii, and then I realized that she had a father. Her father was full of bitterness, wouldn't look at people. He'd gone crazy because he was so bitter, very bad religious spirit. Her mom died when she was young because she was bitter and offended. And I asked my friend, I said, so do people at your church come help you with your dad? And I just assumed it was true, but nobody helped her at all. So, and I think she was pretty much used by the church because she was, trying to be helpful, but I don't think that much of it was too good, and it wasn't helping her very much. But she ended up moving to Colorado with her father, and several of our friends got involved in her world to help her clean, take care of her father. Guy wouldn't look at us, wouldn't smile, wouldn't talk at us. We actually gave him, flowers, and we'd go clean and we'd go help her, and he wouldn't look at us, and he was just full of hatred and bitterness. So then Jean goes over to her house one day. She wanted him to come pray. So he goes over there and prays, and the dog dies. He cursed the spirit of pity, self-pity. I want to specifically talk about that too, the self-pity thing, because it's a huge problem. Because when you're under the demonic dimension of self-pity, there's another demonic friend with that demon, and it's called proud wrath. So in a sense, that's why her father went crazy, and she'd been taking care of her father for the last 10 or so years, who was laying in his bed of sorrow, being crazy. And after about 2 years, okay, so Jean goes over to pray. The dog dies, who was just one of those really pitiful dogs with the long ears that you just wanted to cry and feel sorry for when you saw the basset hound. I don't know what they're called, but it was one of those, you just want to burst out crying and feel sorry for yourself with this kind of dog. So the dog died, who was given a clean bill of health by the vet earlier, and there was reasons the dog needed to die probably, but her dad went into the hospital, and he was going to be ready to be shipped off, and Jean said, why don't you go see our friend's dad? So I always learned you respect the elderly. You don't get involved with the elderly's life. You don't tell them anything. What do I have to give this guy? I mean, I resisted him. I didn't want to go, but I finally obeyed him and went to the hospital with another man, and I started giving him my testimony about self-pity and how when you're full of self-pity, you just put everybody in your life through hell because you're seeing yourself as a victim. I don't quite remember what I said, but I talked about despair, hopelessness, fretting, whining, complaining, self-pity, and how when we're miserable because we don't understand that we're all being tested in this life to see if we're just going to be bitter and critical and hate people, or if we're going to look up and be forgiven and love people and learn how to help them, because we're examining our own self before a holy God and getting answers. So I don't know what I said, but this man fell down in my arms crying uncontrollably. Here's an older man, looked like he was 90. He's probably only about 70. I don't know, but he came around. This guy shook off the self-pity. He got out of his bed, a guy who hadn't been taking care of himself for years, got his own apartment, loved everybody, started coming to meetings. I mean, powerful, powerful stuff. He never felt sorry for himself again. And I don't remember what happened with the credit card towards the end of his life, but I'm thinking that he was buying presents for everybody, and And the only time he felt sorry for himself was when his credit card got full. And so I think Gene might have given his daughter some more money to put on the card so he could keep buying people presents. And, I think around that time after he bought people presents, he actually died, but he died happy, and he came out from under the power of self-pity. Powerful. He even wrote letters, went back to the place he lived and repented to a bunch of people in his family for just making everybody his victim, because he was living like a victim. So there's a lot of history with his friend too, because again, we can tend to see taking the log out of our eye and loving people as a bad thing to do, right? So we bite, devour, we consume other people, we get bitter, critical, and offended because we don't want to look at the log in our eye, right? And she had her time in that chair. She grew up as a pitiful victim too. She came from the same kind of spiritual dimension I did, where when you don't understand God's operation in your life, you just see yourself as a victim, and then you get mad, and then everybody pays because you're angry because you're a victim. So it's some unique kind of hell. And I become so skinny, I was just dying. I lost the color in my eyes, feeling sorry for myself, and I just about did terrible things to myself and my kids. So I was done kind of with the world of self-pity when I met her. And even then, it was hard for her not to be offended, my friend, and to really own loving people, judging herself, taking the log out of her eye. Even at one point, she was feeling like such a victim. She's small and tiny too, right? She has her husband up against the wall, I mean, it's amazing the things people can do when they get offended to other people. So we've had a long history together. Again, 40 years. I've known several people in this family, and all one thing in common. We all tend to look at ourselves as victims, so we become bitter. And then we get offended, and then we get mean. Proud wrath goes right hand in hand with that bitter, critical, offended. I'm glad I'm not like them, right? Even the two thieves on the cross, one of them is saying, hey, if you're God, get us down from here. You better fix our problems, God. You better just fix them. If you're God, just get us down from here. Yeah, that's how most people are. And the other guy recovered his soul in the last hour of his life, saying, man, I deserve to be here. Wow, are you kidding? You're going to slander this innocent man that's dying next to us? He's innocent. God, I wish you'll take me to paradise with you. Man, that guy got his heart right and his spirit right in the last hour of his death. Pretty cool. Two completely different responses, right? One guy thinks he's entitled, and the other guy is really sorry for his sin. Big lesson there. Anyway, years later, because who of us really wants to be in this school of the Spirit where we're learning how to love our brother and see that as good? No, the carnal person does not see learning how to be your brother's keeper and keep your own soul and tearing the weeds out of your own soul and dealing with the rocks, taking the logs out of our own eyes so we can see clearly, to have a twig ministry. My friend wasn't doing this real well, and it really affected her daughter. And one of the horrors of self-pity, now I sat down with both of them. My friend really got it, but her daughter didn't get it. And she kind of washed her hands of the obligation again to examine herself so she could love other people. So she was a scorner. And I hate to say that, but we all can be. I mean, it's a dark demonic spirit. The devil was the first scorner. And she became queen of all the other scorners that didn't want to look at themselves either. Sadly, it's sad, because when you feel sorry for yourself and you're bitter, you can get very, very sick physically. Those demonic spirits will take your health away. And I know that from personal experience. It's a miracle I'm not dead, actually, and that I'm healthy. Because the road of bitterness and self-pity is a road of extreme physical destruction. And her mother has definitely paid the price that way in examining everybody else and not examining herself. Now her mother, on the other hand, has written me a couple letters of apology and is very sorry, but she spent the last maybe 20 or 25 years extremely ill. Because when we're chopping up other people and eating them, we are not going to be healthy. And there's a tremendous toll in the soul of those that are bitter and offended and look down on people. And, you know, what's really exciting is here again, the fourth generation. Now, I've been having a lot of interaction with the fourth generation in this same family who now has adult children. And being able to really understand sowing to the wind of the flesh and inheriting the whirlwind, the fourth generation who's got fifth generations now, and I don't know if she's a grandma, she might be, I'm not sure about that, but we could be talking 6 generations here of sowing to the wind and inheriting the whirlwind. What's really cool though is her grandfather escaped. Even her mother, when I was giving her grandmother my testimony, her grandmother broke down crying uncontrollably in my arms saying, "Oh my God, what the hell have I done to my kids and my family? Oh no, God, forgive me, help me." I mean, it bonded us together because she realized she was going to take her family out if she kept living the same way. And, you know, we've been faithful. We've had a lot of trials and tribulations, but amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saves wretches like us. We were lost, now we see, and we learn how to love better. That's what's really cool, is watching a bunch of women actually climb out of the hell of idolatry and self-love and bitterness to actually take care of the garden of their soul and help other women take care of the garden of theirs, and not despise being keepers of their own soul and saving and keeping the souls of others. And you know, what's really, really cool about this, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Now there's an uncle here too. And what's interesting about the uncle, this girl's uncle that I'm talking about now, which is the son of my friend, he was a severe addict, because also in this world of being offended and feeling sorry for yourself and bitter, you become an addict, right? When a man is inactive in his own soul, he imagines lust and mocks good instruction. So once we decide that we're going to be spiritually inactive, here comes the addiction. Doesn't matter what it is. You can be addicted to anything that you're checked out with, because spiritual inactivity leads to one addiction or another. But what's interesting about the uncle, not does he only have a super powerful testimony of being resurrected from the dead, but I knew him when he was young. Like a teenager, I met him. This is this girl's uncle, okay? Which is the grandson of the man that fell in my arms, repenting of being a pitiful, angry, bitter man who was controlling and self-serving, and decided he didn't want to live that way. So now I'm talking about his grandson, my friend's son. I knew him when he was a teenager, and he's been in and out of this ministry like 2 or 3 times. He's one of the few people that never said, "Goodbye, Gene and Cece. I'm going to slander you all over the planet now because I want to go serve my belly and love the world and the lust of the flesh and take gambles." He actually owned it. He's one of the only people in this whole ministry I've ever known, traveling through life with Gene Sullivan for 38, that says, "Hey, I want to go lust after the things of the world and the flesh for a while. See you later." I mean, at least he said, you know, I'm not going to chew everybody up and slice and dice everyone and blame everybody else in the ministry for my problems. I just want to go play and be worldly and follow the lust of the flesh and the pride of life and make my God my belly. And he did it like 2 or 3 times. He ended up in a severely horrible situation, and his mother got a call that he was dying and he wasn't going to make it. And that mother, my friend, went down there and laid hands and resurrected that kid from the dead, and he's been with the ministry and a happy camper ever since then, maybe in his 40s or 50s. I'm not sure how old he is, but you know, I've known the family, again, probably 38 years myself, 37. Gene's known him maybe 40 years. So there's a lot of history here, and there's nothing new under the sun. This is kind of the generational curse in every single family. So what's really cool is the ones that escaped. Her father, the grandfather, my friend's father escaped the world of a bitter, pitiful victim that was full of malice and hatred and proud wrath, because anybody playing out the role of a victim in self-pity also is full of proud wrath. Because the only reason we can play the part of the victim is because we think we're better than everybody else, right? Pride, and we lie to ourselves. Everybody else is so much worse than me, right? I'm the only one that needs mercy for the spiritual crimes I commit. Nobody else does. You know, it's the downfall right there. So the father escaped it, and there's lots of great stories with him. And the mother escaped it, and you know what? She's had a lot of trials and tribulations, but she's still winning the game. Sadly, the daughter has had a hard time being a slanderer, and that takes, again, we can try to damn people and bless God, but it doesn't work. We can't damn people that are created in God's image and try to bless God. We end up damning ourselves. And I think one of the things that I realized, if I lived like a bitter victim, I would make my children suicidal. I figured that out when they were young. If I want to do this self-pity act, I'll raise my kids as victims, and they'll be full of proud wrath, and that proud wrath will make them murderers, or they'll murder themselves. And sadly, that curse played out in that family too. And that's why it's very important to not be bitter and not to travel through life as a victim and feel sorry for yourself, because the proud wrath is there too. And we're living in a world full of people with proud wrath that are living life through victims, not giving a rip about saving and keeping their own soul, nor do they really care about being their brother's keeper. And that's what the blessing is, actually, is for me to tend the garden of my own soul so I can be my brother's keeper. But when you're carnal, you think it's an evil thing, which is sadly the road this girl I'm talking to now, her mother has gone down. But I think she's really understanding not sowing to the wind and inheriting the whirlwind, and caring about walking after the spirit of life in Jesus Christ herself, instead of walking after the law of sin and death, because all there is sin and death there. There's no life there. And I think she gets it. It's really exciting to be able to talk to her because she's rejoicing in the truth. And I think I've met a lot of bitter women that get really sad when I tell them the truth because they don't want to change. I don't want to be responsible to love my own soul or to love somebody else's. And you know, there's a lot of women I talk to who get very, very sad when I tell them the truth that could make them free, but that's not what's happening with her. So I wanted to encourage you, little one, to keep fighting the good fight of faith. It's worth it, because we can not only get on the path of life, we can be the path of life to others. That's what it says. Mischief is conceived and it gives birth. So the devil is looking for us to be bitter and offended because he knows he can use us to give birth then, right, to the wrong thing. Those who heed reproof and correction are not only on the path of life, they are the path of life to others. And those who refuse and neglect it not only go astray, they're the parents to those that commit suicide. That's the sad part. And you know, you don't have to do that anymore. You can change it all around. God redeems what the cankerworm has stolen. He makes a way where there is no way, a path in the wilderness, a way in the desert. And he will give us the double for our debt. He can make a way where there is no way. And I'm cheering you on, little one. You can break out of this family curse. Amen.